From the headlines that move us
to the plays on the field and the people making a difference.
It's news, sports, stories, and the people that keep our community alive.
This is the Heartbeat of Tampa Bay.
I'm Christopher Ingram.
And I'm Sarina Fazan. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Sarina, we have a fantastic guest today. Someone I've known for over 20 years in politics, is just a super smart guy. He's now in the realm of international politics, global politics. He really gets it. A really good, dear old friend of mine, Josh Burgin.
Josh, thank you so much for being here. And I want to say, even before you can even speak, just in the last few minutes getting a chance to talk to you, what an impressive man you are.
Chris, it's great to see you again. Sarina, thank you for welcoming me on the show. I'm really honored to be here.
We are going to give you a chance to talk.
All good.
So you and I go way back. You were in politics working for Sam Rashid, and you ran for county commission. I wrote some columns about you.
You did, Chris.
I did.
You did.
We're still friends, even though I wrote some columns about you. But he took it in stride. And I used to go to Republican Party events in Hillsborough County, and he has like 7 sisters that we used to call them the Burgin clan. And I would go to these county Republican Party meetings, and the Burgin girls would just, just like,
oh yeah, you were persona non grata at the time, for sure.
But you know, we had fun. I remember one time I went out there, and one of your sisters came up to me and she goes, "We want to take our picture with you." And so I had a picture with all the beautiful sisters of his all around me. And of course, the history was that there was a little bit of friction there, but it was cool. We all had it in good stride.
Indeed.
Okay, so then you went off to college. You got
Eventually.
went to Harvard, and then you got involved in global politics. Tell us about how that happened.
So let me step back, because I want to make clear what Harvard was.
Okay.
As you pointed out, a few of you guys made sure that some doors closed, and it left me sort of looking at what to do next.
Ouch.
And that's reality. I'm not even upset about it. It was a reality of.
Well, I also encourage you to go to college.
Certain doors closed, and other doors, clearly, if I was going to make steps forward, I needed to. And so literally I went to HCC. And I'm super grateful for the professors and faculty at HCC who took me in as a 40-year-old or 38-year-old. That part was done. I started HCC, moved to Polk State, needed to graduate quicker, went to the dean and said, "Hey, can you let me take even more classes than I'm supposed to? I will keep the GPA. I promise you I will make the school proud as a result of this." He said, "I need to think about this." It was, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks later, he signs off, he approves. And I hustle through, finish that out. I literally I had 5 credits of Russian to start with. I wrap up in 2 calendar years.
That's incredible.
A four-year undergrad degree. And I was meeting with Michael Stevens, who was then the HR director at the Hart Board. Governor Scott had put me on the transit agency post that one county commission race. And as I'm working on a final paper, HR for public administration, I knew that Michael had to talk with me. Now, of course, Michael has zoomed up the ladder and is now head of the aviation authority. He spends an hour with me, and it was slightly awkward. I think he thought I was fishing. I think he thought that I was trying to elicit information around the board, and I truly wasn't. I was just writing a paper. I was even writing it in a way that even if it got records requested from within academic paper side, that it was still not intended to hurt them. So we kind of do this dodge and weave for about an hour, but then when it's over, I turned to leave, and I said, "Michael, you've got a law degree. I'm thinking about law school. What do you think?" And he embraced me, and he said, "You got to go to Harvard." "What are you talking about?" He's like, no, seriously. I've seen you at the dais. I see how you do your homework. I see how you speak. You have to go to Harvard. And he refused to let me go that day. He refused to let me go. We were embraced in a handshake. He refused to let me go until I promised him that I would call, that I would at least do the due diligence of figuring it out. And I made that call that day. Admissions officer said at the Harvard Kennedy School, said, "Josh, you should apply. The committee would love to read your story." I knew I'd missed the LSAT deadline for that year anyway, at any rate. So I applied, found that LSAT studies were miserable. I hated it. It was not cut out to be a lawyer, nor did I want to take on all that debt. And
I'm coughing. I'm so sorry. I know that but
sorry, I'm choking you up there.
You are choking me up because I have this really, really strong connection with Harvard. But please continue and ignore my,
So in the midst of all this, literally I prayed. It's like maybe a month before decision. I prayed. I said, "God, if you will get me accepted to Harvard Kennedy School, I will stop all this law school considerations. I can't afford the opportunity cost of the debt anyway." That happens. It's a transformative experience in terms of relationships built, in terms of connectivity made, just in terms of brand reputation.
Yeah,
I mean, the notion of having the H on the resume clearly opened doors in ways that I couldn't open previous, and it opened the door for me to engage with some activities in Poland, which have grown, extended, I was a participant at the Warsaw Security Forum in their Rising Leaders program. They didn't cap at 35 like most programs do. I was right at the cutoff age of 40 and they accepted me.
Wow.
And I kept going back to the point where they said, you keep coming back. I'm like, well, yeah. And they said, so that means you enjoy it because you keep paying to come back. I said, yeah. And the final answer, the final comment was, so would you want to organize this program you've been a part of? And I said, absolutely. And it's been a lot of growth ever since.
So tell us, you have this interest in foreign policy, but you also have a lot of experience with local politics as well, which
Sure.
is how I first got to know you, and you were a genius at it, and crunching the numbers and doing your homework, like always very impressive in that regard. So it doesn't surprise me that Harvard saw in you what they saw in you. But how did you get to where you are now? You're with the Alliance for Global Security,
Okay.
which is an organization you founded.
It is.
And tell us about it and what was the impetus of that?
So I think it's fair to step back just a tiny bit because AGS grew out of the agora created by the Pisarskis and the leadership team at the Warsaw Security Forum. This is a relatively new convening in the European sense. You probably have just seen headlines coming out of the Munich Security Conference in the past few weeks. Munich is the granddaddy of these events. It's probably 35 to 40 years old, and it draws the top tier. There's a very limited amount of space there. About 900 people could get in the room. It was notably the largest congressional delegation ever went to Munich this year. That said, the Warsaw Security Forum, founded in 2014 in a response to Little Green Men. There had been conversations for a couple of years ongoing, but Little Green Men from Russia crossing over the border into Ukraine, it is my strong sense, caused the Pisarskis to take a leap of faith. They had 300 attendees that first year, and this past year they had 2,600 in attendance.
Wow.
It is a big to-do in the European context. The Europeans do a much better job convening than we do. There's events from Helsinki to Sicily every single year. So to answer your question more fully, where does AGS come after 6-7 years of organizing programming there and recognizing, there's really nothing like this in the US, and we need to not just think about members of Congress, but we need to start thinking about city councils, county commissioners, state house, state senate folks, opening doors for them to come into environments like this. And as importantly, as the politics have changed even more recently, there's even greater urgency to educate these audiences around what are the implications of what's happening internationally.
And what you do at AGS is really unique in the United States in as much as you really have a mission to try to help foster and facilitate discussions about what's happening internationally with state and local communities, which is almost completely foreign in our country. I mean, no pun intended. And you have recognized this, and it's really what you focus on. And tell us how that works. I mean, do you have a hard time when you call and reach out and try to get state and local elected officials to come to your events because they've never really experienced that type of request? Or why would
Chris,
foreign
I'm still
policy
having a
matter
hard
to
time.
me?
I'm still having a hard time
Right?
with this. But there's urgency and it's time when it matters. If we go back to the era of Reagan, all defense and security was decided by Washington because it was all over there. The deep waters on both sides of continental United States represented a moat that protected us in the era of cyber. With the number of immigrants that we have, both legal and illegal, we have the specter of a mass at-scale cyber attack coupled with sabotage that didn't exist in the 80s. Okay, a terrorism event, an airplane being hijacked in the 80s, that was sort of, you might see little bits, but it wasn't the sort of thing that could be perpetuated by a nation state or multiple nation states at scale, meaning not one municipality, not two, but 300 all at the same time. And we hear, when you go to the various defense and security conferences that exist, we hear a lot of terminology around the word resilience. Resilience, resilience, resilience. Great. Resilience comes with responsibility. And local water treatment facilities and local hospitals, local transportation systems, even our street lights, they're not managed by Washington. They're not even managed by the state capitol. They're managed by local folks. And if local folks are not being read in, and I don't mean the classified briefing on a base, I don't mean even the classified briefing that you might get in Congress, but just the open source, general knowledge within a select community, but general knowledge of what's happening internationally. How are China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, along with their subsidiaries, collaborating in a way to wrest the world in a darker direction? And what are the implications at the very granular, localized level? Because this isn't something that's happening far away. The same sort of water power plants that are being hacked in Poland, we're seeing similar water treatment facilities and or power plants being hacked in the United States. We're seeing these things happening at scale. The Chinese have literally tens of thousands of people dedicated to this every single day.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's so scary when you
It really
take
is.
a look at it. And you were saying, Josh, that you even asked yourself some questions, that if this happened, would we know what to do? Could you share some of those questions that seem so simple, but that aren't so simple, that you were even asking
So
yourself?
contextually, let's think it in a way that's probably easy to understand for most people. Let's think about a hospital, because we've all been into one. I won't name the local ones, but we have the hospitals that we know of that are sort of in the mix. And we know that there's a political overlay, that there's probably either a member of the county commission, a member of the city council sitting on that oversight board, or sitting on a contributing oversight board. Have our local hospitals simulated what it looks like if the hospital loses tech? The tech doesn't work, now what?
They're going to be scurrying
Is
to
there-
go buy pencils and paper.
Again, is there paper processes that have been simulated or structured out? Has this been simulated? Because we've seen hospitals around the world where this has happened, and they have outages that can last weeks, sometimes months. They may have to completely replace, and we've seen hospitals that have had to revert to paper, and the chaos that represented for them. They worked through it. There's examples that can be modeled after, and again, it's probably not going to be Washington coming down and dictating. It's probably an enterprising city councilman or county commissioner who's insisting we need to do this because we don't want to find ourselves in a moment where we don't know what to do. Because in this,
The old saying, proper planning prevents poor performance, right?
precisely this.
So through AGS, Alliance for Global Security, you put on various symposiums, you reach out to legislators, county and state and local government officials to try to get them to start thinking about these types of things. And it's kind of foreign to them, so it's a big step for you, I would imagine. What's the biggest challenge that you really face?
So Chris, we're 18 months old.
Okay.
And I'm very proud of the velocity and the movement at which this startup has grown. Between our board of 10, our International Advisory Council with advisors from Taipei to Ottawa and many stops in between, I'm comfortable at the rate at which we have moved for a startup. That said, we're still in the process of solving 3 puzzles in parallel. Content, participants, and who pays for it.
All right.
So this is a work in progress, and we're having to solve this. There's like 3 Rubik's Cubes happening all at once, and I'm excited about this. It's good. To your point around events and activities, we are hosting our first annualized convening here in Tampa, the
Congratulations.
AGS Frontiers Forum in April. This will be an international convening. We're expecting delegate participants from the state of Florida. I have confirmations that have come in or application reservations that have come in from South Carolina, Tennessee, Arkansas, Pennsylvania. I'm expecting some from West Virginia, expecting delegates out of Canada, expecting a small delegation out of the EU, and likely a member of parliament from Taiwan.
Fantastic.
Fingers crossed on all this. Goal is about 250 people in the room. I have a deeply held view that it is better caught than taught. As in political campaigns, momentum has meaning. Why? Because people are talking about it. Why? Because people have a similar feeling. I'm absolutely convinced that to put people in the right room, have them focusing on on common problem sets, even if from different perspectives, the dialogue, the discussion, the people on the stage are important, but the people off the stage are just as important. Growing from that first convening, I anticipate doing half-day seminars in state capitals. We have ongoing activities, again, through the Warsaw Security Forum. Again, it's distinct and separate. We're not overlapping here, but I've organized that one line of programming, and we've consistently done some follow-up activities in Warsaw this past year in Gdansk. We will do the same this year. We're now in our 3rd year of organizing a transatlantic, meaning US and EU participants, on a study visit into Taiwan. So there's a lot of things that are building out in terms of programming that already exists. There's new programming coming online with the expectation for many of these things that they will be annualized.
Josh, what's the biggest threat facing the United States of America today?
Indifference.
Indifference. Well, that never changes.
Indifference, sort of selective ignorance. The idea that we have access to so much information through the devices we carry in our pockets, and we choose to go with the junk food of Instagram or whatnot. As a candid matter, I do think we're in this transitional space, or space in which what worked in the 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s no longer do. The idea that a county commission, that a city council should have to add to their already busy schedules to add yet something else, there's resistance, friction to that. Nobody wants to take on more. But I am convinced that a forward-looking city councilor or county commissioner can do more to protect their community in the context of the world that is coming than even a frontline warfighter. I don't want to disrespect in any way the U.S. military and frontline warfighters, but I do believe that a forward-facing county commission or city council that's preparing for that day in which the everything, everywhere, all at once cyber attack happens and the chaos that results, they will do more to protect their community than somebody that's far away.
By saying that, you're saying, if you read between the lines, this is going to happen. It's just a matter of when and how prepared are we going to be for it.
People far smarter than me are saying so.
Yeah.
When Jen Easterly talks about, Jen Easterly, the former CISO under the Biden administration, who that the language I'm using, the everything, everywhere, all at once, I heard from her. I don't know if she coined the term, but she is the one that crystallized it in my mind. When she sits around on a podcast and talks about creating a go box, a cyber resource box for her and her family, like we talk about preparing for hurricanes here in Florida, the idea of canned foods, the idea of dried foods, the idea of water, the idea of cash.
So what would be in a cyber go box?
I think it looks very similar to what we have for a hurricane box. It is literally it's food stocks for up to a couple weeks.
Right.
It's water supplies. It's cash because ATMs are not going to work
Right.
because you're
The
probably
power
not
grid,
going to be able to swipe
water,
your
everything
card.
could just be wiped out by the push of a button.
That is a worst case scenario. But at least, if I'm sort of listening to those that are further up the food chain than I am, Jen Easterly described the notion of putting this together with her family, and I've done the same.
It is really, so frightening because we rely so much on cyber. And what you talked about, we live in a transitionary period. I truly feel that too. Like we need to catch up.
Do you have a cyber go box?
I don't have a cyber go box, but maybe I should.
We all should.
I've done this myself, and so yes, I would encourage people that are thinking about that world. It's convenient to walk around only with cards, but you might want to have some cash on hand and other things.
And I'm a prepared guy. Yep. My wife used to laugh at me because I was the most prepared guy for when I lived up in DC. I had a generator and I had MREs and all that kind of stuff. And not when we had an Armageddon situation, but when we had a power failure because of freezing and power lines snapping, and my neighbors were all without power for 2 weeks, and I had a generator and didn't have to throw anything out of my refrigerator, and I kept my sump pump running and a little portable heater in the bedroom at night. Nobody was laughing at me then.
For sure not.
But the average American is not thinking that way, right? And what is it going to take to get people to understand? Are they going to have to go through this once completely unprepared before people finally start to realize that this is not black helicopter crowd kind of conspiracy stuff? This is going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
Chris, I'm concerned that it will take an incident to drive the level of urgency. Yeah. If there was already people doing what I'm doing, I wouldn't have a job to do because people were already ahead of that curve. Yeah. But I've just discovered in the last weeks that even as I'm reaching out to other people, getting invited to speak, it's quite apparent to me that this is a need that time has come. And I'm concerned that we do face a scenario in which 5 or 6 states or more are at varying degrees out of critical services. Power, water, again, hospitals, street lights, internet, cell phones. Remember, the Chinese have compromised all the major cell phone carriers in the United States for at least 18 months to 2 years. And there's no clarity as to when we're going to be able to eject the Chinese cyber teams from that.
Is China the greatest foreign policy security threat to America today?
There's no hesitation. The answer is yes, for multiple reasons. Size of economy, total population, focus and attention to detail. The Russians are equally in sort of the axis of chaos, but they tend to focus on the notion of petty thievery. Yeah. So their petty cyber gangs go out there, compromise, steal money, they use ransomware, whatnot. The Chinese, on the other hand, are disciplined. They engage in a term that I had only heard about a year and a half ago, so living off the land, where at a very systematic approach, they penetrate critical infrastructure. They penetrate the servers, individual computers, and just sit there maintaining a connection for long periods of time. When discovered and kicked off of these networks, it's usually 2 days to 2 weeks before they're back on. The Russians would want to steal money quickly. The Chinese are just willing to sit there and grow that list of penetrations.
Wow.
And the question in my mind then is for what? In many cases, they don't have intelligence value for them.
And you're not talking about just compromising network servers and corporate America and the power grid and whatnot. They're actually penetrating individual American citizens' computers, which they can then feed off of.
That
Am I
is
hearing
happening
that right?
too,
Yeah.
but I'm sort of most concerned about the industrial service area of this. But it is clear that they're capable and they're targeting individuals. The whole cell phone breach, for a long time, the U.S. government advocated that encrypted messaging services not be allowed. They attempted to sort of shut this down, looked for legislation, and there was resistance. When I say encrypted messages, I mean Signal, I mean WhatsApp encryption, etc. And once they realized that the Chinese had penetrated and were using this to target text messages from within the Trump campaign leading up to 2020 and the Kamala Harris campaign leading up to 2020, then the federal government switched their position and started encouraging everyday citizens to switch to encrypted messaging apps because the cell systems, the telecoms were that compromised.
Wow, that's crazy. What would you do if you were an elected official today in the state of Florida, the state house or county commission in Hillsborough County?
The first thing I probably want to do is run a survey on critical infrastructure and its vulnerabilities. So there's an illustration I gave you the other day on the phone, Chris, one that I'm not going to do for broadcast, but there's a place in Tampa Bay where when I drive by that part of the road, the questions that come through my mind straight away, I'm convinced are not the same questions that my city council members and county commissioners think of.
Right.
To that end, I would want to deploy a comprehensive survey of critical infrastructure, again, things that if they were to not function, would be incredibly disruptive to the life and livability of the residents of this community. And then figure out what can be done at some level or another to either harden those things, to create more observation, to potentially protect it, to have eyes and ears to create protection. That's the first thing I would do. It would be some sort of a survey.
And it's just limitless, like the possibilities of where you should start focusing. I mean, I think about, and I'm not an expert on this, but our power grid, our water supply, our transportation infrastructure, the port, self-service, internet capabilities. I mean, you shut down just one of those things and it's very disruptive. You start talking about a multitude of, power, internet, water being shut down all at the same time. I mean, it could end up in anarchy. Is that an overstatement?
I don't think so. And it always depends on how long. For what it's worth, I don't believe that even in the midst of a sort of an everything, everywhere, all at once cyber attack, I don't think that these services are going down indefinitely. The question is how long? How long does it take to restore some of these services? How long does it take to bring these things back on? To your point around water, if you have 2 weeks without water, you have a public health risk. Right. And people will not be able to remove the health risks from their home fast enough. There will be impacts as a result of that. Yeah. If you have hospitals that aren't able to receive customers, that's its own problem set. Again, my concern is not that in the vast majority of places that all of this goes down at once. It will be some variation with some communities likely experiencing everything not working at once. So to this end, beginning to think holistically. Remember, we're sort of still operating kind of like the 1950s. We built a world that was aligned around the way we expected to live it, and now we're in a world that is fundamentally different because the internet, because of the number of immigrants that are here that aren't necessarily loyal to America. And some of those are citizens, some of them are illegal immigrants. Reports out of Congress some 2 years ago, when I looked at this last, had something on the order of 35,000 PLA-aged Chinese men having crossed the southern
People's
border.
Liberation Army.
Correct.
Right, who are basically spies or operatives for the Chinese government.
So let's be clear. If we're just looking at an age category, obviously not 100% of these are working for the Chinese government. Some are truly sort of fleeing bad situations. But what percentage creates risk for America out of 3,500?
Less than 1%.
To 35,000.
Yeah.
1%.
Yeah.
Even 1%. We're talking about 350. In teams of 3 trained to do bad things, they will be very successful.
Yeah.
So, and this is something clearly that you live, even with your examples with your own kids, right? You have your kids learning different languages. I mean, share a little bit more of the personal side of it, if you don't mind.
Sure.
For people, some people who, may say, "Gosh, is this paranoia?" And I don't mean to say, but for people to kind of grasp it, if you could just, touch on the human element of it.
So I'll say this. Before my children were born, I knew many couples that looked like my wife and I. A Russian-speaking wife, American husband. The kids would understand, but nobody spoke. And I thought this was really problematic because the great value is to be able to engage in the world in a way that in a language that's not your own. So I was very committed, made declarative statements. This must be. And so when the kids were born, there was high intentionality. There was no ban on screen time, but screen time had to be in that language set, in Russian. And in fact, it was to the point where my mother said when my children were young, Josh, when are you going to teach these kids to speak English? I'm like, Mom, it's okay. They're going. It'll happen. And then there's just some other things happened. We moved to Massachusetts. Ended up getting accepted to Harvard Kennedy School. Moved to Massachusetts, living in Cambridge, and the school that was closest to where we were living had a Mandarin specialized program.
Wow.
So basically, half of their school day was in Chinese, half their school day in English. And I'm like, well, this is cool. So threw them into that. That was fun. And they were learning and growing in that space. And then in time. Had an opportunity to move to Germany. And some of our friends in the greater Cambridge area are like, well, you're going to send them to the American school, right? I'm like, no, they go to German school. And I remember when we got to Germany, initially I was like, let's put them in a summer program so they have some practice leading into their first school year. They get to the summer program. 40% of those kids are Russian speaking. They came back speaking so many dirty words in Russian they never heard in our house that it was like they got all educated on Ruski Mat instead of what they should have been studying with the German.
Right.
But that said, in the first few months it was difficult for them. I mean, Nathan's teacher said at some point, Josh, he just puts his head down on the desk like he's tired. I'm like, yes, his brain hurts. This is hard. But at this stage, I would say that both are comfortably fluent in German. I laugh when I said to you earlier that they literally when they resort to fighting with each other, it happens in German. I cannot explain why they resort to German for fighting. But let me come back to another point. I mean, that notion of paranoia. Despite the fact that the very serious nature of the things that we've talked about, the programming that I have worked to organize for the past 10 years always has high elements of fun. Intentionality around meals, intentionality around shared time at the bar, it's just a reality, and then intentionality around karaoke. Because I find when people sing together, something fundamental changes. Something just fundamental changes. Choirs, when they sing together, heart rates synchronize, breathing synchronizes, amazing things for choirs. But the number of people over the years who've come back to me and said, but Josh at karaoke night. Josh at karaoke night, I'm at karaoke night this. So every bit of the programming that I organize attempts to include, in one way or another, public singing. And to this end, I just got off the phone with a young woman who sings in New York, who's to lead the national anthem for our conference, but she's not to sing it. She's going to get it started. The crowd is to sing it. Because it is the one moment when I know I can get everybody to sing together for a brief moment. I may not be able to do karaoke for 250 people, but I can get them to sing the national anthem with me.
I want to know, what's your go-to karaoke song if you had to pick?
Friends in Low Places.
Friends in Low Places. Garth Brooks. All right.
But isn't that something like it all truly, everything boils down to the human element and how people connect.
For sure.
Even on such serious matters, the true human element. Is I love that, like incorporating fun, incorporating something that gets such serious conversations moving.
As a practical matter, I spent time with Juliette Kayyem when I was at Harvard, and in her class she was teaching about sort of national security but state level interests, and she described the fact how the outcomes on disaster relief, particularly FEMA and the federal government's engagement with states, is directly related to, are they aligned to the same party or not? So trust, proximity, time together, and the notion that when you put people together, even if they're from different parties, in many cases, if they haven't had it, they wouldn't have had an organic chance to spend time together. Give them the chance to spend time together, they will build trust, even if they're from different parties.
You must have been reading my mind, because I was just getting ready to ask you, as it relates to countries that are typically seen as our adversaries, Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, Venezuela, we don't do a good job of having really good interactions with these people. And, I was very much in favor of President Trump's position on North Korea that he took in his first term, that we need to be engaging with these people, because the foreign policy attempts that we've tried to, work with North Korea over the last 40 or 60 years have been an epic failure, listening to all the knuckleheads in Washington, D.C. Let's try something different. Am I wrong about that? And should we be trying to engage at a deeper level with our adversaries, or are the people like the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranians just so far gone that it's not even worth trying?
Chris, I would answer your question this way. We have a heck of a lot of work to do just in maintaining good relationship with our allies.
Right.
I mean, the strained relationship with Europe right now is stunning to me. And to a point that I made earlier to you, for Sabrina, the notion that elected members of European parliaments cannot name 5 or 6 members of the U.S. Congress on a cell phone to me is deeply problematic. Now, gov-to-government relationships, these things exist, and even with their adversaries. Make no mistake, we have a large diplomatic presence in China. We've had large diplomatic presences in Russia and other places. I'm not saying we don't have infrastructure, and the infrastructure of governance is one thing. The infrastructure of the State Department, the infrastructure of the Commerce Department, the infrastructure of the DoD, and interacting with their peer-level groupings. But it's not the same thing as business-to-business connections. It's not the same thing as state. When I say state-to-state, I mean literally the states of the United States rather than Washington. And I've been advocating to my European colleagues now for the better part of a decade that Washington is important, don't ignore it, but it is high time that you begin looking at state capitals too.
I think it's kind of analogous, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of like the broken window theory, right? That Rudy Giuliani, he didn't come up with it, but he most brought attention to it. When he addressed issues in Times Square like prostitutes and drugs and window washers that you don't want washing your car window, and the broken window, right? It's the broken window theory, that you got to fix the little stuff like the broken windows in order to clean up a place, in order to start a dialogue, in order to make effective change on the bigger picture. Is that a fair enough analogy?
I think it's absolutely that there are fundamental basic things that happen between nations and states. That as we're really good at measuring FDI, foreign direct investment. Are we measuring the cross-border marriages?
No.
Are we celebrating the humanity? I don't think we do a great job there. To that end, our European peers tend to look at Washington and fail to understand that the smallest state-level economy in the United States, as a matter of GDP per capita, is still greater than that of Germany's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to that end, unless you're doing an aircraft deal, an energy deal, or a defense equipment deal, you probably don't need to go to Washington to do it. Yeah. If you are looking around energy, appoint a diplomat to Houston. If you're looking to do technology, a diplomatic envoy to Silicon Valley. If you're looking to engage in, you want to look at the states. Our European friends have not woken up to this fully yet. I think that our European friends are not effectively telling their own stories as well. While they do have convenings, as I mentioned earlier, from Helsinki to Sicily each year, and we have less, building bridges to make it clear that the Europeans should be inviting subnational delegations, county commissions, city councils, state house, state senate, into their fora and having reciprocity. So the notion that, NCSL or ALEC, these are big convenings.
National conference.
You get lost at these particular events. Building connectivity to where they're having connections to where our event leads people to then say, oh, you guys should be coming to our event in Texas or in Alabama or in, because these opportunities to travel and learn from each other, even party conferences. I got invited to Maloney's party conference this past December. Really fascinating. I learned a lot from that. There's various party conferences where our elected officials would have reason to go just sit and observe, just go to some of the dinners, just learn from that process.
I got another question for you. I did years ago, I used to do a lot of work for the State Department in some far-flung places like Sudan and Kenya and Macedonia, and I saw a lot of foreign policy related to aid and also our attempts at trying to organize governance and structure in the political systems in various countries. One of the things that always struck me, particularly when I was in Sudan, was I'll call it the infiltration by the Chinese into Africa and the things that they did in trying to build trust and get a foot in the door into their economy and effectively kind of corrupt their government, was completely counter to what I saw the United States doing. We throw money at things, and we, from a humanitarian standpoint, would send bags of rice with the American, compliments of the American people stamped on it, which, these people don't speak English, they can't read English, means nothing to them other than we just got some food, which we much need. But the Chinese, from what I saw, they're doing none of that. They're not throwing money at politicians that just gets corrupted. They're doing things like building infrastructure, roads in sub-Saharan Sudan, buildings, infrastructure things that they put a big plaque that says compliments to the people of China to the people of Sudan, that trying to kind of builds trust. Are we losing our way in terms of what we do as opposed to the Chinese? Are they beating us at our own game just by being smarter?
Chris, they have a huge economy, and they're effectively buying their way into certain friendships. I do want to challenge one thing you said about them not brown bagging or not in giving direct cash to politicians. There's ample evidence that is happening in multiple jurisdictions around the world. That said, the way they are using their economic development dollars, in many cases that infrastructure comes at a cost. And the local communities are having to pay back debts. And when they fail to pay back those debts, the Chinese are taking that infrastructure and collecting going forward. This is we could do a whole session on this.
Right.
I would sort of align onto your general thesis. I think that in many cases that we have not adapted to the world that is. The United States is the most diverse country on earth. And this is good for us. It means that we have lots of languages, lots of cultures, all in one place. But it's as if we're sort of operating under the norms of Jesus Ingleton from the 1970s. One that's hyper-paranoid, one that fails to understand that people out around the world are people. They're human. They have emotions. They have feelings. It's not just the notion of, well, you're going to divide up on this side, the Cold War era of divide on this side or this side, choose your side sort of thing, that people have legitimate feelings, and when we offend them or we don't pay attention to where they're existing, how they're living, our ability to reach them is lower. And I don't think we're going to be able to compete purely on cash. So we're going to have to compete on culture. We're going to have to compete on relationship in a way that I don't think we have been doing, because previously we kind of didn't have to.
It completely, I 100% agree. It completely boils down to connectivity and caring about people. Because if you care about somebody, I mean, if you look at it in the most simple terms, if you care about someone, or it could be a person, a community, you're going to do what it takes to help.
That's true. Good point. Human nature. Right?
Human nature.
All right, Josh, do you have a website people can go explore more and learn about Alliance for Global Security?
AllianceForGlobalSecurity.org. Again, while the conference is not open to the public in a general sense, if someone who's watching this happens to be interested and wants to submit their name for a potential invitation, we'd love to receive some of those inquiries.
And also to get everything that you're doing out there.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm honored to be able to chat with you, Chris. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much.
Every story shared
Adds another heartbeat to Tampa Bay.
from courage to community.
We're so proud to tell the stories that keep our neighborhood strong.
Thanks for watching The Heartbeat of Tampa Bay. Great information.
You guys have that really down. Thanks for watching The Heartbeat of Tampa. You guys were on totally.
We've done it
How many times have you practiced that?
We've done it a few
You know what? It's funny because you mentioned that, because at the very beginning we did practice, a few times, but now I feel like we
got it.
You've got the cadence.
Yeah.
It's like singing a song.
We know